Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for February 1, 2026. This week, Hovik, it's just you and me. I guess we didn't even invite somebody this week.
It's our party and we can decide what we do. So frankly, we'll let's wait and see how it works because I think that there's a lot of stuff to discuss and sometimes it makes sense to have a guest, sometimes it makes sense to discuss it just between because there's so many opinions just with the two of us. I feel a lot of stuff gets omitted because we run out of time. So I think that there's a balance to be struck with guest opinion versus our own opinion.
So I'll start with the Iran conflict, which continues escalating. Trump has sent what he called a big, beautiful armada to the Indian Ocean. I think he is just escalating his threats so that while the back-channel negotiations between the US and Iran are continuing, he wants to pile on the pressure so that he makes believe that there's a big stick that he's carrying. But over the past few days, the Chinese and the Russians are now responding in kind. I've read that they're also sending parts of their armada so that they can start doing military drills in the northern Indian Ocean with the Iranians. So they're showing their support and they're showing that the United States should not be attacking a sovereign country, especially a partner of theirs. What do you think
Yeah.
about this?
I think you are ever the optimist husband. Based on all the analysis that I read, I don't think it's possible to build up such an armada and then not use it. It would look very bad on Trump. And as much as I would love for this conflict to be avoided and actually for you to be correct, I honestly believe that we are in a serious pre-war situation right now. And maybe, who knows, maybe by the time this video is published, we're recording this on Monday, February 2nd. I suspect that we may already be in a war. And we have had numerous guests on our podcast, including Trita Parsi, who argues that sooner or later that Israel's goals haven't been achieved, which means that the second war must be had. I'm not sure. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I don't have any grounds for being so positive. Being hopeful, not positive, being hopeful
Well, I'm
that
not
this is
sure
just like a
which part of
negotiating
me that
tactic.
you found super positive or something. I'm just saying
Well, not
I'm
positive, but
hoping
like
that they will not have to use it because there are a couple of factors going in. Number
yeah.
one, if the Russians and the Chinese are also sending a navy over there, that this could lead to a situation that could escalate even further than a regional conflict. So I'm hoping that'll happen. On the negative side, though, if people are counting on the taco factor that Trump always chickens out, they should realize that Trump is usually chickening out on financial matters when it comes to these tariff issues that cause turmoil in U.S. stock markets and things like that. He doesn't like that. He's willing to chicken out on those, but it's not necessarily true that he'll chicken out and not attack Iran. I think we have a much more serious situation.
We've been talking, of course, with various analysts, and I think that one of the maybe realizations that Iranians have come to over the past year, I think even if you asked Iranian analysts about a year ago about Armenia's intentions, um, you would be led to believe that, I mean, many would not believe that Armenia could play an anti-Iranian role in this region. But we've seen with TRIP, with numerous pro-Turkish and pro-Azeri, and as well essentially effectively anti-BRICS initiatives, Pashinyan has danced into this position where Armenia, for whether we like it or not, now is in anti-Iranian position as well, because the TRIP project is purely if nothing else, then just like it's a threat against Iran, notwithstanding the threat against Armenia and Russia. So we've seen numerous warnings from these analysts. For instance, during these latest protests, there were reports that the Starlink terminals that were used somewhere smuggled through Armenia. I mean, I'm not alluding that the government was involved, but it seems that Armenia's borders proved porous enough for this to happen. And then, of course, there were protests. There were pro-Shah protests in Yerevan. Now, I mean, you could argue that, well, it's a democracy, so anyone can protest, but I would like to see anyone go protest against the government building.
Hmm.
We've seen, we've seen how that ends very quickly. So the fact that some of these very, and it's not, a democratic Iranian protest. It was obviously part of this Zionist plot that coincided with the protests in Iran. It was not. It had nothing to do with the situation for the shop owners in Iran, the bazaris, but it was, it was anti-Khamenei, and I think that the Iranians saw this as an unfriendly act, and I think that you could make the argument because if you protest against the government, it takes you 5 seconds to be uh,
Arrested or
horizontal in a horizontal position in the back of a police car, at best without any bruises, and 10 minutes later in a police precinct. So anyway, I mean, it remains to be seen, but of course, to all our Iranian listeners, we wish you patience. We wish you, we wish this doesn't escalate, but we also hope that you're in a safe location, and if a war does start, then um, the entire region, I think, will be embroiled, and this will be a regional war, as Khamenei today said as well.
yeah. Hovik, let's rock and roll into our next topic.
Aspet, do you have a favorite drummer or favorite
Yes,
band?
I
Who,
do.
who, tell me.
Well, I mean, who cannot like John Bonham from Led Zeppelin? But I also do like Metallica's Lars Ulrich. There are lots of them. I mean, I can name
Yeah.
easily a dozen of them. Why? Why
Well,
do you ask?
well, I mean, just as an anecdote for our listeners, I'm also a big Deep Purple fan. So anything Deep Purple and Ian Pace, therefore,
Ian
is my
Pace,
favorite. Yes,
unbelievable drummer.
but move over Ian Pace, move over John Bonham, Keith Moon, Neil Peart. All of you guys can go to hell because there's a new drummer in town, and his name is the Varcha drummer. Yes, I mean, it's a little bit funny, but Nikol Pashinyan has decided to start a band, and he has called it Varchaband. Varchapet means prime minister in Armenian, so it's a play on the word Varchapet. Um,
So it's
and
Varchaband.
yeah, it's
It's kind of
Varchaband.
funny, actually.
I'll give the credit that there's a lot of thought in marketing put behind this. I mean, obviously, but it's surreal that it's happening with the backdrop of Iran, with the backdrop of just this week. Basically, Pashinyan banned almost all of the members of the bishopric in Armenia, the Episcopal College, all of the bishops in Armenia from traveling to have a Episcopal assembly in Europe. It's happening amidst all reports that all of our Christian religious sites in Artsakh are being destroyed and bashed to pieces. Turkey and Azerbaijan can't stop celebrating their Zangezur corridor, and yeah. So this government has time to deal with all of those issues, plus it has time to open a new band, and they held a concert last week. So for our listeners, for our viewers, I want to play some of the videos. If you are on YouTube, you can follow along. But let me just play a little bit of a clip, and then we can talk about what we see.
Yeah. We'll put the links in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so the MC was Alen Simonyan, of course, and Pashinyan is
Hovik,
the drummer.
where are they getting all these people to show up? I mean, we haven't even heard of Varchaband or anything like this. It's just kind of a surprise for me that there's something like this came out of the blue. Where are all these people coming from? How do they know about this?
Well, I mean, they interviewed a lot of the people who, attended, and some of them, many of them said they work in government administration, but wouldn't disclose where.
So these are
Even the
employees of the government?
Yes. Well, I mean, some of them, the young girls that are dancing with the Minister of Health are from the employees of the Ministry of Health because she herself said so. And there is our fit, Prime Minister with his tight shirt showing off his muscles. But yeah, it was obvious that the crowd
Yeah.
was very controlled, and they were so full of young people that they didn't mind this old guy visiting. And this old guy is a member of parliament, Gagik Melkonyan, one of the most pro-Pashinyan civil contract MPs. Yeah, I mean, so this was the news as the entire region is bracing for war. This is the news that we are subject to. So, what are your thoughts about these developments?
Well, it's entertaining, but I'm pretty sure that this has to do with shoring up Pashinyan's sagging popularity. We reviewed the December MPG poll, if you recall. It showed that his popularity is somewhere in the high teens, maybe 20%. And if you recall, we also noted that the strongest support of popularity numbers went to the Armenian Church, and some of the biggest numbers for them were coming from the youth. That was actually surprising for me also. The age 18 to 35 were among the highest supporters of the Armenian Church and the lowest supporters of Pashinyan. So
Exactly.
I'm thinking maybe Pashinyan is trying to attract, the people that we just saw in the video that you were playing, and at least, if not attract their vote, maybe grab a larger share of their attention span so that he's the person that they're constantly thinking about. Because also part of every poll that we've done, we've noticed that 60 to 65% of the voters always fall in some sort of a undecided adjacent category. So there's a lot of electioneering to be doing. There's a lot of potential for growing popularity for the opposition and the ruling party. So I don't know. I'm putting it in that context.
Yeah, I mean the question then remains, is this the right way to do it? I don't know. I guess we'll
Well, it makes light
uh
of the situation. We just talked about Iran, and Iran is facing war, is facing riots. Uh, can I make a very side comment about that? I think that they just published the nearly 3,000 names of people who were killed. How many years has it been that we haven't seen the names of the killed people in the 44-day war,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean to me it's tone deaf. It's a little bit tone deaf and
Absolutely.
disrespectful, I think.
Yeah. We still don't have
Uh,
that list after 5 years, but we have enough time for a rock band.
I honestly, I don't think this gimmick will work. I think this it was a pretty cheesy effort, despite all the money spent on it. But I'm the wrong demographic.
Hovig, last week we talked about the announcement by the Catholicos that there would be an emergency Episcopal assembly that would be held in Austria, a synod essentially, that would be held in Austria in order to bypass the repressions ongoing against the Armenian Church by Pashinyan's government. The goal essentially is to enable Armenian church leaders from around the world, because we have the worldwide diaspora, to gather for an important discussion and address the current situation that's going on in this government war against the church.
But I guess we could have guessed that Pashinyan would try to stymie this assembly. So how did he do it?
Well, I mean, let's give a little bit of a backstory first. There was an archbishop called Gevorg Saroyan. Actually, his real name is Armen. He was ultimately defrocked, so that's why he's not archbishop. He became one of the renegade archbishops. He was fired from his position. What he lost at that point was the leadership of the diocese, the Arachnortutun of the diocese. It was given to another bishop. But Saroyan refused to step down by the order of a Catholicos. And with the support of the government, he took the church to court. And of course, what do you expect happened, Hovig?
Yes, I mean, in fact, the courts that are controlled by Pashinyan issued an injunction, basically restoring him to his role as the head of the diocese.
Yeah, you
And
absolutely have to air quote that, though, restoring him.
yeah,
They have absolutely no authority to do anything to church people. It's entirely at the, maybe this is not the right word to say, at the pleasure of the Catholicos, but the Catholicos has complete and supreme say over who serves and who doesn't serve, and it's constitutionally protected. So the government, once again, for the nth time on our show, we're saying it's not just on illegal grounds, it's on unconstitutional grounds. The courts demanded that he should be reinstated with absolutely no authority. And so the Catholicos responded by completely defrocking this renegade archbishop. Well, in response to that, over this past weekend, the government suddenly indicted 6 more bishops. They started some sort of an investigation. We're not entirely sure what they're investigating, when the investigation will be done,
Well, the
but they slapped a
investigation is
travel ban
around
on them.
yeah, it's basically that they, I think, illegally, if I remember correctly, it's because they illegally conspired to defrock or fire the archbishop, and even the secretary of the
This is the kind of
arch
evidence that the NSS loses. You remember the case of Archbishop Arshak Khachatryan,
yeah,
who they had suddenly, out of the blue, accused that he had planted marijuana in the back of a protester in 2018. And so the
yes,
Archbishop is still in jail. And over this past week, it became known that the evidence can no longer be found. It has been lost. But the courts have decided they're continuing with the
it's a
charges against
circus.
the archbishop. So it's an absolute circus. It's not like there's any reality to these situations. They're just basically persecuting the church. So the basic thing that I want to get to, there's a travel ban, and these bishops and archbishops cannot travel to Austria to participate in the Catholic Synod. That's the bottom line for Pashinyan.
Yeah, so for me, this was to be expected. The only issue is now how can this be resolved and what recourse does the Catholicos have? I think one of them is, maybe this is the first time, but it would be possible for them to institute Episcopal assemblies via Zoom. I'm not sure how to do it, but it's essentially Pashinyan is now stymieing the entire working of the Assembly of Bishops. And we know that if they have, in my opinion, falsely accused at least some of the bishops of crime outside of Armenia. So if those bishops come to Armenia, they risk being arrested.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, frankly, I
He's
mean,
just
we were
basically
talking
trying to
about,
disable the Catholicos from leading the church by disabling various members, by disabling meetings, synods, the ability to to make orders and carrying them out. So it's just, uh, and for anyone who says that this is aimed only at the Catholicos, even though the stated goal is to depose the Catholicos, the war is against the church because they are confiscating church property. They're passing laws to tax the church. These are not taxes against the Catholicos. These are not the Catholicos' properties. These are church properties that are being
yeah,
confiscated and commandeered.
yeah, and in fact, we're in the month of February. The Armenian Church, I think on February 12th, 1 week before Great Lent, celebrates the feast of Saint Vartan. Saint Vartan, if you don't know, the Battle of Vartanang was an Armenian Sparapet was an Armenian general and a leader who fought against the King Yazgert, who was trying to impose a different religion on Armenians. And it seems like we are now in a very similar situation. I don't think I'm exaggerating this if I say that. So obviously we have had other cases. We've had the Ottoman Empire, we've had different empires that have controlled our land trying to mess with our church. But to me, this is as real as any of those instances. But I want to go back to the case of Arshak Khachatryan, Aspet, because if you remember, this whole thing, this whole renegade bishop assembly started with Arshak Khachatryan.
Just to make clear, Hovik, it didn't start with him leading the renegades. It started with the government attacking Father Arshak, and that's
Yeah.
how it happened.
First,
Yeah.
yeah, first they planted some videos which he denied, and he said they were AI generated. of him violating his priestly oath, whatever. That's an issue of the state, the church, and he was a victim in that. Anyway, that leaked video became the pretense for these bishops. One of them, Hovnan Derderyan, who said that Catholicos should defrog Archbishop Arshak, despite an investigation still being in progress by the church. The church had its own investigative committee that was going to investigate the matter, but they refused. And they essentially sided with Pashinyan and said that the Catholicos must resign. It was obvious that this was a pretense set up to instigate this division in the church. The reason I mention Arshak is because in that original letter demanding the Catholicos' resignation, these renegade bishops, which include Armen Saroyan, formerly Gevorg, head of the Masaid Sultan Diocese, they said that the Catholicos failed to investigate this matter, and they believed it to be true. But then there was another video that I saw where this already defrocked archbishop was accusing the Catholicos of staging the video itself. So on one hand, this renegade archbishop is signing to a statement that says that the Catholicos is not defrocking Archbishop Arshak because he believes the video to be true. And the same archbishop is saying that it was the Catholicos who released this video to
It's
frame.
kind of ridiculous, right? The
Archbishop.
Catholicos
I mean,
is
it's
sitting on compromising video of his archbishops. That is the most ridiculous
and
accusation, frankly.
Archbishop Arshak is one of the most pro-Catholicos bishops.
He operates the
he's right-hand
chancellery,
man.
the secretariat
so
of Echmiadzin.
it's obvious that both these renegade archbishops, for whatever reason, and I can't fathom the reason, they have signed on to this agenda of attacking the Armenian Church, and therefore, I think they are in apostasy. I can't talk about all of them, and I think that I appreciate the situation where the Catholicos cannot defrock everyone immediately, right? If he does, it'll probably. So it was a very balanced maneuver. First, trying to reason with them, and then when that didn't work, he was forced to fire him as the head of the diocese. And then when that didn't work, only then did he defrock him. But we see that even then, the government immediately picked up on this and is now opened a criminal case in support of the defrocked archbishop.
These are the most ridiculous things. Frankly, this is opinion, the reason I think that Arshak Sirpazan is being persecuted like this is because he is a very capable right-hand person in Echmiadzin. He's loyal to the Catholicos, and there's very little they can do to the Catholicos if Father Arshak is operating.
Yes.
So that's why he's being persecuted.
Yeah.
I think that's the bottom line.
So in a rare occurrence at the Council of Europe, where our foreign minister was, Mirzoyan was questioned about Armenia's attack against the church. He skirted the question, and this was, I have a video to show you. This happened sometime either yesterday or today. We're recording this on Monday.
The next question will be posed by Edward Lee on behalf of ECPA.
Minister, the Armenian Apostolic Church is 1,700 years old and one of the last bastions of independent thought in Armenia. Mr. Pashinyan, the Prime Minister, stated that he wants to take over the Armenian Apostolic Church and replace it with, quote, a state-centered church, one that is banned from dissenting from the state. And to this end, he has arrested a third of the bishops of Armenia. How is this anything other than a violation of the democratic rights of religious freedom and freedom of speech that every member of the Council of Europe is supposed to uphold?
Mr. Minister.
Thank you very much for this question. I really acknowledge that this is a question this is a rumor, I'm sorry for using this word, that should be touched upon and clarified. But before that, I will, if you allow, I will continue. I understand that I missed the part of your question, the EU civilian mission.
And then goes on like for 2 minutes to talk about some other issue. Just like a bullshit response about the civilian mission.
Yeah. We'll provide the link in podcast.groong.org/episode number.
I acknowledge, Sir Edward, your efforts and your contribution in the cause of preservation of Armenian cultural and spiritual heritage in Jerusalem, the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem. At the same time, I'm afraid, and I have to say that I completely disagree with some of your qualifications, and I'm afraid your information is not completely true, to say the least. There is no persecution of clergymen in Armenia. But I want to come up with a question to you. You have a situation when some citizens of Armenia publicly call for violent remove of democratically elected government from power through coup d'etats, and public calls for, and I invite your attention here, public calls for assassination of some of the leadership of Armenia, including myself, by the way. And what would be your decision? What would be your actions in this situation? To me, there is rule of law in Armenia, and everyone, all the citizens of Republic of Armenia must abide the law, be it a clergyman, be it a politician, an official, I don't know, a conductor, an artist, whoever. So indeed, there are now ongoing judicial proceedings, and I don't want to anyhow undermine the presumption of innocence. But also we have heard these public calls upon removal of power, violently removal of power of democratically elected government, and also calls for assassination. Yeah, that's the very sad reality in Armenia. We do have some clergymen who did this. Thank you so much.
Anyway, so you watch the video. You know, this is your opinion. This is a allegation. This is not true, and all these bishops, all these clergy were, you know, plotting against the state, and they even threatened to kill leaders of the state, including myself, and that's why we did it.
This is a lie. Yeah, this is a lie. I can't believe that they don't know enough to challenge that in the parliament.
Imagine this was Ukraine, if this is some other issue, and some quote unquote Russian misinformation made it to the floor of the Council of Europe. You would have like every one of the MPs buzzing and trying to sort of, you know, retort, provide a, you know, response. And of course, this is patently false. But, you know, my question, I guess, is whether Armenia can avoid more backlash, because, you know, as I said, we are now in a circus. I mean, it's we are no better. Armenia is no better than Saudi Arabia in terms of religious freedom. How are European leaders going to pretend that these issues don't exist? In 2 months, there's going to be the European Political Community meeting in Armenia. Armenia is hosting it. I just don't see how the Armenian government will be able to avoid this backlash. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Political expediency. I think Europe has basically invested in this ruling party and Pashinyan as an anti-Russian buffer state, essentially. And that's what's important to them. That is all that they care about. The democracy veneer, it's as long as they control the PR for this, is just in their hands, and that's all there is to it. Most of these charges, most of these issues will go away after the election. Let's see how the election turns out. I don't have a lot of hope on that, but I suspect that all of these various issues of bishops imprisoned or archbishops who have travel bans on them right now and what have you, all of these things will just wash away. They might even
I kind of don't
apologize
agree with that.
for these things, and
I think that if Pashinyan wins the elections, then he will go full throttle on.
no, he will do
If
something
Pashinyan,
against the church, but I don't think that these petty travel bans and things like that are going to last. These are temporary things to disable the Catholics from holding his synod in
yeah, but I
Austria,
mean,
for example. These are going to go away.
I think that the end goal of Pashinyan obtaining full control of the Armenian Church will be materialized if Pashinyan wins the elections. For the next, he will have 5 more years to accomplish this. So maybe it'll be done at a slower pace. But eventually, the Armenian Church, just like the church in Ukraine, will be another one that is subservient to the government of Armenia, and
It'll turn into some kind of a patriarchate.
yeah. So he will have maybe no need
I think
to
you are
ban
worried
the
about the
bishops.
Armenian Church. I'm worried about Armenia if he wins the elections for
Well,
another
I mean,
5
yeah,
years.
but I think it's important to make sure that people don't think that this is just a pre-election gimmick, because in fact it's hurting him in elections. The attacking the church. We talked about how popular the church was, and attacking the church is definitely hitting him in terms of points, but he's forced to do it because I think that he has some commitments to deliver to his bosses or bodies, Erdogan and Aliyev. Anyway, important to mention a few things. This week, I believe tomorrow, there is an International Religious Freedom Organization, there is IRF summit that's occurring this week. Now, I'm sort of, I don't know how I feel about this, because IRF is the organization that was created by the US government to be like an anti-China vector. It was meant to talk about the rights of the Uyghurs and all the religious persecution, quote unquote, by China. And if we remember, this is one of the first things that Pashinyan signed onto when his coup in 2018 materialized. Armenia immediately became a member of this organization. So what's interesting is that somehow Aram Vardevanyan, who is Narek Karapetyan's lawyer, is apparently scheduled to give a keynote presentation at this summit. I mean, there are 6, 7 keynote speakers, and he's listed as one of them. I just checked the website before this meeting, and he's still listed there. Obviously, he's going to talk about Narek Karapetyan. He's going to talk about the Armenian Church, and this will be, if he does speak, this will be an embarrassment for Armenia, which is a member of that organization. Part of me has doubts whether he will be allowed to speak. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah,
And CSI is doing, God's work in this. And it's one of the few organizations, Christian Solidarity International, that is advocating on behalf of Christian Armenians. Shame on everyone else. And I mean, they show their true colors. But our friend Joel Veldkamp is back in Yerevan. And tomorrow, I think to coincide with the IRF summit, their organization will be giving a press conference in Armenia. So I plan to attend that, and we will also be
let's
hosting
see if
him
we can
tomorrow
catch
on
him
our
afterwards.
podcast.
Yeah,
Yes.
do a quick show with Joel.
All right. What else is new? Should we talk about?
You wanted to mention the chaplaincy of the army, which was dissolved by Suren Papikyan.
Yeah. So the founders of this, republic, third republic, all the hardships that they endured, but one of the positive aspects was the Armenian Church, and along with that, there's this institute that is part of the army itself, the chaplaincy. There are actually chaplains assigned to the army, and they are assigned at most army positions. There's a local chaplain. And 2 weeks ago, Azat reported that chaplains serving in the armed forces were approached by generals and were approached by high-level army officials and asked to sign statements against the Catholicos. So essentially joining this reform council that Pashinyan has set up. Initially, the government denied that this ever happened, but we saw evidence of two chaplains or two members of this chaplain institute joining this council, but only two. And we wanted to know more about this, how true this was. And I think that today we received the answer. Defense Minister Suren Papikyan, 2 days ago actually, dissolved the entire chaplaincy institute of the army. I mean, imagine having so much spite and imagine having so much disregard for our church that just because they don't fulfill your orders, you dissolve an entire institute that was doing good things. I mean, it was consoling soldiers. It was providing moral support to soldiers. In many cases, it was baptizing soldiers on the front, and all of that is now gone because for whatever reason, these clergy did not sign on to Pashinyan's agenda as part of the army.
Yeah.
How's that
Well,
for church-state separation?
Hovig,
Yeah.
it's not only in Armenia that Armenians are under attack, so don't feel isolated. In a move that highlights a moment of vulnerability for the entire worldwide community of Armenians, Trump's administrator for the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services attacked Armenian Americans for defrauding America's health services. This is Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, as he's known on television in America. He's a dual citizen of Turkey and the United States, and reportedly is pretty close to Turkish President Erdogan. And at a time when Turkey is doing everything it can to divide Armenia from its Armenian diaspora, this racist move by a Turkish American dual citizen raises a lot of eyebrows and also highlights how, when we are divided as a worldwide nation, and those divisions are promoted from the government of Armenia right now, our weaknesses will float to the surface. Fortunately, we have people like the California governor, Gavin Newsom, who called Oz's statements baseless and racist. And I concur. That was a racist move by Mehmet Oz and targeted at Armenians, Armenian Americans specifically.
Mehmet Oz has a grudge against Armenians because the Armenian community opposed him and opposed his racism and his anti-Armenian statements in the past. But this seems to be a little bit overboard. I think any Armenian, whether you support Trump or not, should reject this kind of interference. And it's very clear that this was interference on his behalf, trying to paint the entire Armenian community as cheaters or fraudsters and so forth. Maybe they will. I'm pretty sure that they will discover some criminality going on, but just like any other community, I'm sure if you went to some Ukrainian community, and dig there, he will find issues there. If he goes to a black community and looks for issues, he will find issues there. So this is the wrong way, and it's totally reprehensible what he's doing. And he's doing it, I would say, mostly 99% to paint Armenians as criminals rather than trying to go after crime. So he's trying to paint the entire community as criminals.
Right.
In other news, I want to talk about Samuel Karapetyan's Mirzoyan movement. He has led the movement. His name is attached to it. And last week, we mentioned that the new political party, Strong Armenia, had planned to hold its inaugural meeting on February 12th. For multiple times, Narek Karapetyan, who is the movement's official spokesperson right now, has said that only on February 12th will we know who their candidate for prime ministership is. It's clear that Samuel Karapetyan can't be the prime minister because he has dual Russian and Armenian citizenship. And according to the law, you have to be solely an Armenian citizen for X number of years in order to be a candidate for the parliament and also a prime ministerial candidate. But Azatutun is reporting, citing unnamed sources, that Narek Karapetyan will lead that party, which again is called Strong Armenia, for the June parliamentary elections. If that is true, what are your thoughts about his candidacy, Aspet? Does he have what it takes? I mean, should we even comment on it? Because so far, I think it's just Azatutun citing its own sources.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be the candidate until we hear it. I guess they're going to have an inaugural meeting for the party on February 12th, and that's when we will know for sure. But I'm not a good judge of whether Narek Karapetyan can lead the party or not. He's actually been very forward and has done a pretty good job with Mirzoyan, whether that's what it takes, whether that's the kind of charisma that people are looking for to get fired up and vote for Strong Armenia or some form of a coalition within the opposition party. I don't know. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I know him more as a business person, as someone who is interested in economics. Samuel Karapetyan, we have to understand that besides Kierkegaardian, maybe even more, Samuel Karapetyan is one of the benefactors who has done the most for Armenia. So he has a very, very positive track record and reputation in Armenia. But I don't know if this will work.
Hovig, regardless of this, whatever we think about Narek or Samuel, what is it going to take for Strong Armenia to succeed? What is it going to take for the opposition to succeed? Is it still fully dependent on exactly one person, like who's going to be the leader? Or is there going to be a coalition of leaders who are going to make the entire movement a success? How does politics work in Armenia from that perspective?
So I think that a lot of it will depend on personal charisma. So if Samuel Karapetyan takes a very active role in the elections, then I think more people will vote for them. But if he remains in jail or if he remains barred from participating, then I'm not sure if as good a track record as Narek Karapetyan seems to have. I don't know if that will be equivalent to what Samuel Karapetyan can bring to the table. At the same time, I want to just give a caveat that the elections in Armenia, in my opinion, are going to be heavily determined by administrative resources by Pashinyan.
Actually, Hovig, that was my final question to you. Given how illegal and unconstitutional that this government is acting right now with absolute impunity, can we expect a fair election in June? Can they be free and fair under the current conditions?
The more people that come to the voting booth, the more difficult it will be for Pashinyan to forge the results of the election. But in the end, I think that everyone will be happy just to close their eyes and let Pashinyan win, meaning international observers. And speaking of international observers and fair elections, Pashinyan's government just last week adopted a law which will effectively control who may monitor the elections. And they will give the Central Electoral Commission the ability to ban monitoring groups who, quote, fail to maintain political neutrality. And this is a clearly aimed at Hayakve, one of the election monitors, who the government alleges was not neutral. And I think that nothing like that can be farther from the truth.
I think it's important to also mention that, of course, it started with its target being Hayakve. And of course, the government is not going to say no to OSCE observers, but at this point, they can say no to Russian observers of the OSCE.
Yeah.
So who's going to decide if you're neutral or not neutral?
is this gentleman by the name of Vahagan Hovakimyan. His entire career revolves around Nikol Pashinyan. At the early parts of his career, he was a journalist working for Nikol Pashinyan's newspaper. So his entire life, he has been feeding off Nikol Pashinyan's money, or whoever pays Nikol Pashinyan. Then in 2013, when Pashinyan went to parliament, he became Pashinyan's assistant in parliament. In 2016, when Pashinyan opened civil contract, this Vahagan Hovakimyan, who is supposed to be the head of the Central Electoral Commission, who's supposed to be completely neutral, became a member of civil contract himself. In 2018, when the elections happened, he was on the civil contract list and he became an MP. Then in 2022, he resigned from his role in the party, like just days before he was elected by the Civil Contract Control Parliament as head of the CEC. Someone like that is going to decide who is neutral and who isn't. And the only other major electoral monitoring mission in Armenia is one headed by Daniel Ioannisyan.
Union of Informed Citizens.
Yeah, he is essentially the poster boy for NGOs, so-called NGOs, so-called civil society. In reality, a vector for foreign influence in Armenia, receiving millions of so-called aid from three-letter agencies. And in fact, even the Armenian government has provided money to Daniel Ioannisyan's NGOs. And he has been one of the most pro-civil contract voices. So my question to you is, do you think that Nikol Pashinyan's former employee, Vahagan Hovakimyan, head of the Central Electoral Commission, will be able to do anything about Daniel Ioannisyan, who's obviously pro-civil contract and not neutral?
Okay, Hovig, I'm going to assume that's a rhetorical question.
You assume correct, my friend.
I wanna hit our final topic. We're running out of time. So I want to talk about this big, beautiful neighborhood that's being talked about in Yerevan. And no, that's not Trump talking. That's your mayor, Tikran Avinyan. He wants to push forward with this rebuild of Yerevan's Noragyugh district. I don't live in Yerevan, but you do. So this stuff is real for you. What are your thoughts about this?
I just don't, I think that Armenia is hyper urbanized and essentially around only one urban center, Yerevan. And if I had any money, I would try to develop the regions, try to develop cities that are outside of Yerevan, building transportation, communication routes between regions and Yerevan so that people can and goods can reach there faster. So obviously, I'm very much against investing more money in Yerevan. I mean, the infrastructure of Yerevan is already at its breaking point, and I just don't see, why.
Well, one of the things he says,
invest so
Hovig,
much. Yeah.
is that this is going to take away from the traffic and the busyness at the center of Yerevan to one of its outskirts. And I guess they're planning to buy off a lot of the land here. Like we're talking about 84 hectares of land, and there are 65,000 homes, apartments, condos, or whatever that they're planning to buy at market rates plus 30% or something. And then they're going to tear things down. They're going to rebuild it. And
I mean, the same argument can be made for any other region. If you build a community in a region, that will take away from Yerevan. And
so I'm very
less
suspicious because
population.
it seems to me like it's a little bit of a land grab from
for
watching from
friends of civil
outside,
contract,
taking
from
something that
Avinyan's
is,
friends.
yeah, because it's going to be, they're going to buy things cheap. As I understand, Noragyugh is not one of the most expensive areas. They're going to grab it cheap. They're going to renovate it. The people who are going to do all of the contracting, rebuilding, and everything, they're all 100% associated with the ruling party. They're the ones who make the money. And then they'll end up selling this stuff to whoever.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So,
disastrous for Armenia, but it will make a lot of civil contract adjacent business people very rich and property developers.
Yeah, I don't know where the people who are actually living there are going to go. Whether they sell out for market prices or market plus 30%, still, where are they going to go and where are they going to live? I'm just not sure.
You're not developing the country. You're contributing more to the urbanization of Armenia rather than developing the regions. You're contributing more to the gentrification of Yerevan because all those people, even if they won't be able to afford a house even at the rates that they are able to sell their properties, they won't be able to afford houses in Yerevan, and they'll eventually move out.
Right. Okay. Well, that was our weekend review show. Today is February 2nd, 2026. Hovik, any final thoughts? Well, let me take your final thought for a second and you can add to it. Don't forget to support us, folks. We are always looking for your support. We know that you listen to us, and that shows us that you have trust in our material. And so share our shows. That's very important. Share it to your friends on social media. Like our shows and comment our shows. The discussion, the activity around the show actually pipes it up in the platform's algorithms, and we become more visible. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm really excited about starting the history series. And when I announced it during the last episode, for whatever reason, I didn't expect anyone to pay attention to it. But we got a lot of interesting comments about it. And even offline, out of band, we got some some good feedback and encouragement to move forward with that. So I'm really excited and trying to focus on that. And if you have any specific areas of Armenian history, of the thousands of years of Armenian history that you'd like us to cover with various academic guests, let us know in the comments, and we will try to schedule them as our time permits.
I'm Asbed Bedrosyan in Los Angeles.
And I'm Hovik Manocharyan in occupied Yerevan. Take care.